I hated who I had become. I said, I want something different. I don't think that there's anything as powerful as someone's story. You don't have to fight this battle alone. Surround yourself with people who make you feel safe, who make you feel understood. Find people who have the roadmap to where you want to go. People want a better life, but you have to be willing to do the work. You have to be a willing participant in your healing journey. We all need to find that thing that helps us to feel as though we're giving to something greater than ourselves. And that is what reminds people that their life has meaning and purpose. Don't sell yourself short. You have unique abilities, gifts, and talents that the world needs. And I think that your soul needs to express it as much as the world needs it.
Welcome to the Differentiation Podcast. My name is Michèle Sorgaroli. I'm your host today, and we are being joined by our very special guest, Allan Kehler. Now, you're in for a treat. He has delivered thousands of keynotes and written several best-selling books on mental wellness, resilience, and workplace wellness. And he has co-founded with his wife, Tanya, a clothing line called Born Resilient. Now, something that I've really noticed is that throughout his life, Allan has also worked as an addictions counselor, a clinical case manager, a post-secondary instructor, but throughout that whole journey, Allan has really drawn on his own personal experience with mental illness and addiction and suicide, and those have helped him stay really grounded in connection. But the thing that really stands out most is that Allan is passionate, deeply passionate about creating environments where people feel seen, heard, and supported. Now, Allan currently lives today in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, Canada, and he shares his life with Tanya, his wife, 4 boys, 3 dogs, and a tank of fish. And Allan, it is a treat to have you join us today. Thank you.
Thank you, Michèle. Grateful to be here.
Oh, it's a treat. Okay, so let's dig right in here because something that has really stood out to me, I've listened to a few of your previous online presentations and whatnot, gotten to know you a wee bit. Storytelling seems to be your thing. You're known to be a powerful storyteller. Storytelling is your thing. And I'm curious, what is it about the story and why is that so important to you?
Yeah, I don't think that there's anything as powerful as someone's story, and we all have one. And I think that even in the context of mental health, that there's so many resources out there,
Yeah.
but your story is what truly matters. Your story is what allows people to feel less alone in this world where we often feel isolated and disconnected. So I'm a huge advocate in empowering people to find their voice because I know what it feels like to lead that life of silence, and it just did not serve me. And it was only once I started actually speaking freely about some of my own experiences that I felt not only liberated, but less alone because it allowed other people to relate to my story.
Oh, that's interesting. So finding your voice through your own story, right? By sharing your own experiences. Is that what I heard?
100%.
Yeah. I'm fascinated by this because it feels interestingly to me, it feels like there's a lot of courage in that. Um, from from the outsider perspective, there's a lot of courage in sharing a vulnerable story about who you are and what you are. And yet, at the same time, our story is our truth. Our story is where our true voice comes out, right?
Shame keeps us sick. I mean,
Mhm.
shame and keeping all those secrets within and the fear, it did not serve me. And you're right, it does require absolute courage. I think I forget that sometimes because for me at this point, having spoken as often as I have, it's
Right.
become almost habitual or robotic. But when I actually reflect on those early times, it was awful, Michèle.
Oh yeah, I'm
And
sure.
people still feel as though they don't want to talk about some of their pain or experiences because they don't want to be perceived as weak. And the thing is that if you or anyone else has ever given themselves permission to be vulnerable, then you understand that it requires absolute courage. And for that reason, I would argue that vulnerability equals strength.
Mm.
And I love redefining what it means to be strong.
Oh my gosh, tell us more about that. What does that mean to you? When you say redefine it, what it means to be strong?
Because when people let their walls down, it's liberating when you no longer have to hide behind that proverbial mask. And it's rewarding when you're able to recognize that you don't have to fight this battle alone, that other people have similar thoughts, fears, feelings, because like half my life, I
Mm.
swore that I was the only person having certain thoughts or experiences. And when I found out that that wasn't the case, that set me on an entirely different path.
Yeah, yeah. Isn't that the truth, though? So I think, I mean, you're touching on it, and we all think inside our own head that we're the only one having those thoughts. And yet, the reality is that the human condition is we're all filled with thoughts that are similar in some form or another. They're similar, right? And yet,
Yeah,
what do you think, in your experience, because you've spent a ton of time on this, what do you think causes that feeling that we're alone when there's so much evidence out there, especially now, but there's so much evidence out there that we're not in our thoughts alone. Why
I
do you think
think
that is?
fear, uh, at a very basic level, we all just want to belong. We want to fit in. We want to be seen. We want to be heard. And I think that for myself and many others, there's this worry that if we do share some of our fears, insecurities, feelings, that maybe it will be rejected, or maybe we won't be seen how we hope to in our place of work, in our community, in our families. And so that silence persists. There's a great line, and I was really fortunate, Michèle, to spend 8 years teaching at an Indigenous college, and
Mm.
I embraced that culture, and it's a huge part of my healing journey. And there was an elder who said to me, "It's okay, Al, to let the bird in your mind, but do not let it make a nest." And so for me,
Wow.
even now, like when I
Mm.
struggle or when I start to feel alone in some of my thoughts, I recognize that that begs to see the light of day. And I have supports around me. I have a loving wife who listens without judgment. But I
Mm.
recognize that if I don't put a voice to some of those thoughts, then it's going to get
Hmm.
darker and darker. And I know my patterns. I start to isolate, withdraw, and then turn back towards some of that self-destruction.
Right. If you don't put a voice to the patterns, they get darker and darker. Yeah, the monster grows, right? If you don't release it,
Hmm.
if you don't release it from the cage, the monster gets a little more aggressive with every passing day.
Yes,
Nothing
100%.
likes to be caged up. It's a really good metaphor as you think about what's going on in your brain, releasing it out in the body. Um, when you're talking about, you said shame keeps us sick, and then you talked about how people are resistant to connecting with others because of their feeling that they might get rejected or lose or have some judgment around that. Um, how how do you see that journey? How do you see someone overcoming that resistance around shame, rejection, judgment in order to be well? It's a tough path to find the courage to do that, and yet the story is the way, excuse me, the story is the way out. That's what I'm getting from this so far. Is that
Yeah, I
accurate?
mean, I'm in recovery. I lead a life of sobriety, and in a lot of those rooms, the 12 step, for example, we talk about being sick and tired of being sick and tired. And I think that
Mm.
for many individuals, we reach a place where we realize this sucks. Like I don't want this anymore. And you almost stand at that proverbial fork in the road where you recognize that if you continue to do nothing, nothing's gonna get better. It won't change. And so this is where, think about some of the risks that you've taken in the past. And it's interesting that often your greatest risks have led to your greatest rewards.
Yeah.
And I always encourage people to just try. Like what you're doing is not working. So try taking a risk and being vulnerable with
Hmm.
someone who you feel safe with. And
Oh,
that's been a key part of my healing journey. Surround yourself with people who make you feel safe, who make you feel understood. For me, that looks like, Alcoholics Anonymous, Gamblers Anonymous, bipolar support groups, being in rooms with other men who've been sexually abused. There are
hmm.
resources, there are supports, and you don't have to fight those battles alone, but take a
Yeah.
risk, and I guarantee you'll be pleasantly surprised.
Hmm. As yeah, I'm sure everybody listening can experience that, can feel that in their past at some point when they've taken a risk. So I'm curious about your journey. You said that at some point there's a fork in the road where there's either do nothing or do something different. Um, what was the fork for you? When were you? Because I mean, we often come against that. Like, I'm thinking about my own life, which doesn't look at all like yours, and so I can appreciate the magnitude of experience that you have. That's far beyond anything I can imagine. Um, but as we hit a fork in the road, sometimes that fork is there, and we choose to do nothing, and we choose to do nothing. We keep taking that fork where we don't act. So what happens in that pivotal moment? What is happening when we do, from your experience? Like, what happened for you when you thought, okay, enough's enough? When did the fork become really pronounced that caused you to change direction?
I think for a lot of individuals, myself included, it's not necessarily a single moment, but it's a series of moments. For me, one of the big ones, though, was like I was in Edmonton on a field placement. I was studying education, and so I had to go teach at a junior high school. And at that time, my life was fueled with alcohol. I'm basically living at this one casino. It's called the River Creek Casino. I wasn't eating, I wasn't sleeping. I was having seizures almost every day, and yet I'm functioning. I was teaching this grade 7, 8, 9 special ed split. And after I had taught the one class, I remember walking out of the classroom and my body just said, mm-mm. Like, we can't do this anymore.
Mm-hmm.
We won't do this anymore. And I dropped to a knee, and then gravity won. And then I'm face down on this cold tile floor. And that was humbling. Was embarrassing. My students were incredible. A
Mm-hmm.
number of them, kind of saw this go down, and some were down the hallway standing at lockers, and they said, Mr. K, are you okay? And it was the same robotic response, right? I was like, oh, yeah, no, Mr. K is just clumsy. All right. But I wasn't. And I actually remember getting myself up off that floor, and I went to the closest washroom. I'm somebody who always avoided the mirror.
Mm-hmm.
I hated what I saw.
Mm-hmm.
And wow, I made connection with myself that day, and I was just a ghost of a person. And I hated who I had become. And that was one of those moments for me, Michelle, where I said, I want something different.
Yeah.
I don't even know how, but I
Mm-hmm.
just know that I need to do something different. I mean, I didn't even get sober for, I don't know, 4 years after that.
Mm-hmm.
But we get to a place where we start to make small, consistent changes. And I would say at the top of that is ensuring that we surround ourselves with people who just get us. That's the key thing that can fast track you, and find people who have the roadmap to where you want to go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You said there's a consistent theme through this, which is really standing out for me, this sense of people. People are around you, and the sense of connection, which you just touched on when you looked in the mirror. And I thought that was really interesting. You said you connected with yourself. Can you expand on that? What was different that day that allowed you to connect with yourself?
Well, one of my early diagnoses when I started meeting psychiatrists was body dysmorphic disorder, which was no surprise because from an early age, I could never look in a mirror. I avoided mirrors at all costs. My mind basically sees things that other people don't,
Oh.
and we are often our greatest um, barriers, right? And for me, struggling with mental illness, all those suicidal ideations, the lifestyle of an addict, I just that compounded my inability to look in the mirror because then everything's real. And there's that saying, eyes are windows to the soul. Well, they are.
Oh, yeah.
And my mom would often look at me, or when I come home, she would know immediately by looking into my eyes. And even when I worked at an addiction treatment center, I found it fascinating when we would meet with an individual on the first day when they arrived, and we were asked to take a picture of them just for the sake of going into their um, binder for the duration of the treatment, and we would also have to take a picture of them on the day that they left treatment. And I was always fascinated to see the distinct change that took place in one's eyes. And the light's gone. And for me, when I looked in the mirror that day, that like there was no light. It was an absolute absence of light. And I just didn't like who I had become. And I understood that if you want something different, you have to do something different, because I was the victim
Yeah.
for so long,
Oh,
which did not serve me. It was the woe is me, nobody will understand me. Yes, they will.
eyes, yeah. Nobody will understand me. That's another theme that you've talked about. Um, the light is gone. I got goosebumps when you said that because when you look in someone's eyes, when there are varying degrees of light. You're right.
Hmm.
Um, I'm I'm wanting to explore that further, but I'm not sure where to go because there's something there in the eyes of the window to the soul. So what do you think is happening within that allows for that light to shine? What's different when there's no light versus when there is light? Do you have a sense?
It took me a long time to understand that emotions are energy. Took me a long time to understand that feeling leads to healing. I led this life of secrecy, and so I, like many others, just suppressed and buried all those emotions, which caused that incredible darkness. And it takes so much energy. It's
Mm.
exhausting to keep all of those emotions and secrets and fears bottled within. And I think that that basically just snuffs out the
Yeah.
light. And I also, over time, understood that darkness begs. It begs to see the light of day. The definition of healing for me is so simple. The more that we get the darkness out, the more room we're going to make for light. And so
Mm-hmm.
the more that we can put a voice to some of our pain, the more that we can connect to others, it's going to remove some of that darkness.
Mm-hmm.
It's the reason why people will talk to someone that they trust for, 5, 10 minutes, just bleh, put it all out
Mm-hmm.
there. If the other person genuinely just listens,
Mm-hmm.
then the individual who is sharing will inevitably step back and be like, oh, well, I feel better. Why? I mean, it's as simple as there was a release. Darkness begs to see the light of day, and talking is one of those modalities that can help us to be free from it. And we don't always want to talk. I didn't. And I know that your daughter, Michelle Natasha, she found an outlet through
Mm-hmm.
writing, as
Mm-hmm.
did I,
Mm-hmm.
because you can tell a piece of paper anything.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're done, just rip it up, burn it, bury it, put it in a balloon. Just get rid of it.
Get
But
rid of it.
find healthy ways to get that stuff out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Darkness begs for light. Is that what you said?
Hmm.
Such a great metaphor. Darkness begs for light. And so when there is interesting for those of us who are here in this conversation and joining Alan, when eyes are lacking light, there's a darkness buried within that needs to be released. And that's then maybe an opportunity for us to say, hey, do you want to talk? Are you okay? In some form or another, recognizing that there's something being pushed down or buried. I'm sensing that from here when we see these lives or eyes. I experienced it's making me think, eyes are the window to the soul. And back in my late 20s, I traveled to Indonesia for just about a month and we stayed there. And that was when I really, for the very first time, understood what that means, that eyes are the window to the soul. Because there's something at that time, and I can't say it's the same today. This was in the mid 90s, early 90s. Um, but at that time, Indonesian eyes were just like a pool of access into the universe. There was something, and it was everybody. They were all the same. There was this, and they were different from Thai or Korean or Japanese, or they've all got dark eyes. But there was something about the Indonesian eyes that were so deep and rich and
Hmm.
soulful. And I remember that I just felt incredible access to something so much bigger in the universe through these incredible eyes. Um, so it was the very first time I really started to pay real attention to someone's eyes and started looking for that in others yet again, right? The eyes are the window to the soul. So thank you for bringing that forward. It's such an important part, and there's that piece around the darkness where the light comes through that I think we probably don't necessarily think that the eyes are access to connection with someone when we can really see whether there's light or lack thereof.
Hmm. I agree. I think eyes are absolutely
They're magic.
the key to connection. Even now, I never shy away from the fact that I find life hard.
Mm,
I continuously struggle with mental health. I have highs and lows, and when I'm not in a good frame of mind, I can walk through the door of our home, and Tanya can look at me, and immediately she just knows that I'm not well simply by
hmm
my eyes. It's also the energy that I bring, which is just lower. But I think that for a lot of people, Michelle, the challenge then is if they see this or feel it, they don't know what to do. They don't know what to say. And I think that collectively we can probably agree that doing nothing and maintaining
hmm
silence is not the answer.
hmm hmm Agreed. Yeah, maintaining silence. So there's something there's something really stood out to me. You talk about in your bio and also in a lot of your speeches, you talk about and I alluded to this earlier as well, helping people feel seen, heard, and the usual follow with that is understood. Helping people feel seen, heard, and understood. Now you've replaced that with the word supported, seen,
Hmm.
heard, and supported. I'm assuming that was intentional.
Yeah, I mean, it's synonymous in many ways, but that just is reflective of my own journey because I never wanted to be fixed. No, none of us want to be fixed. For me, there are three simple things that I wanted more than anything else when I was struggling, and it was I wanted to be seen, heard, and supported. But going back to what I said earlier, you do not get that if you don't give yourself permission to be vulnerable.
Tell us more. What do you mean?
People want a better life, but you have to be willing to do the work. Healing is work. When I was a victim and going through all my challenges with mental illness, addictions, and suicide, that's what I wanted. Uh, but you have to be a willing participant in your healing journey.
hmm What does that, from your perspective, what does it feel like or look like if you are a participant in your healing journey?
You ask questions. You take risks. You give yourself permission to be vulnerable. I can't tell you how many times, Michelle, I sat in a parking lot of some kind of support group, crying uncontrollably, terrified to open up that car door and walk in that building because I knew that if I did so, it was real. And denial is a more comfortable place for us to live. But there are also, I don't have words to explain the shame or the fear that I had before walking into a lot
hmm
of groups for the first time, but in the same breath, I don't have words to explain the rewards that came from being in a environment where people just got me. Because, like, for example, I never knew why I was always trying to harm or kill myself to the degree in which I was.
hmm
Like I hated myself.
mm
And it was only early in my sobriety that I was able to get some of the answers because when we're surrounded with support, when we have love and our body feels like we're in this place of strength, then often traumatic memories will surface. And that's when I started to recall that I was sexually abused throughout my entire childhood. And that was a moment where it's like, well, what do you do with that? Where do you go? You don't just call up the guys and say, hey, this is what I'm going through. So that's where either you go left, and I
Mm-hmm.
almost did, where it's
Mm-hmm.
just suppression, suicide, not doing this because it was
Yeah.
so intense,
Yeah.
or you do something proactive. And I was fortunate to find a group
Mm-hmm.
that allowed me to be with other men who'd been sexually abused. And that first time that I went, the first time, there was only one guy who showed up. One. And I remember I was like, right, because we don't talk about this. And I was so close to leaving.
Mm-hmm.
And right before I turned around to leave, the counselor, she was great. She just encouraged me to have a seat, and so I did. And Michelle, I don't even remember the question that she asked me when the group started, but like I couldn't answer. I couldn't handle it. And I just broke. And I started to cry. Now I'm embarrassed, and now
Yeah.
I'm gonna run.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the only guy who is there says the words that saved my life. He looked at me and he said,
Goosebumps.
"It's okay, Al. I get it." And Michelle, he did.
Yeah.
You like where else could I have gone to get that gift? And that's what I'm saying. It is
Mm-hmm.
often our greatest risks that will lead us to the greatest rewards because yeah, there was only one other guy who showed up, but that guy got me to the degree in which I needed. I didn't even need to speak about a lot of my feelings, but just knowing that I wasn't alone in that battle was an absolute game changer. And the thing that hurts me and bothers me is that so many people feel like there's no place for them to go, that they won't be seen, heard, or supported.
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
there are, but you
Mm-hmm.
have to get out of that victim mentality and be courageous in your step towards healing.
Yeah. Why do you th thank you for sharing that story. Why do you think that people feel like there's no place for them to get support when there is?
I think there's a few reasons. I mean, we talked about this earlier. It is not easy to raise your hand, be vulnerable, make the call, ask for help in a world where we often feel as though we're judged. I
Mm-hmm.
think that for some individuals, it's really difficult when you finally put yourself out there and it's not met how you hoped it would be.
Mm.
And so then naturally, what are you going to do? You're going to take
Retreat.
two, three
Mm.
steps back. And
Mm-hmm.
this mindset for me didn't help me where when I started meeting with counselors, sometimes it's just not a fit. It's just not.
Mm-hmm.
But I would go to an appointment and it didn't go maybe how I hoped it would be. And then I would just put my walls back up and I would say, well, I tried. But when I look back, I also wasn't truthful in a lot of those conversations that
Mm.
I was having. I kept things from them. And so then how can they possibly help me anyway? And I learned the importance of just like say it how it is, put it out there, um, because silence and suppressing things only hurts ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Say it how it is and put it out there. Um, there's the story, right? Tell my story.
Hmm.
That's what I'm hearing you say.
Yeah,
Am I getting it right? Yeah. Tell your whole story, not just a part of the story, but the whole story. Um,
yeah. And I mean, I'm not saying that we have to share our personal story to a certain degree for the world to hear, but I do think that we would all benefit from a counselor or a place that we can go to just blah.
mhm.
And as I said before, if that's too far of a stretch, then tell a piece of paper. But this stuff has to come out.
Yeah, agreed. You, the connection that I made earlier, just a few minutes ago in the conversation, um, what I wrote down was love. You spoke of love, and that gave you strength. So I made that association. When you feel loved, you feel stronger.
Love is such an emotionally charged word for me. I struggle with that word immensely. I have struggled to love myself my entire life. I have struggled to love others. Um, the only person, Michelle, the only guy I should say that I ever felt comfortable saying I love you to was my best friend, Justin Andres.
Mm.
And we lost him to suicide.
Hmm.
And that that was another one of those proverbial forks in the road where I almost didn't make it after
Mm.
that. And I put my wife through um a lot after that. But the thing that I learned through that was it was actually only through Justin's death that I was able to find life. And that's an incredible gift that he gave me.
Hmm.
And actually, this is pretty personal. Sometimes I share this from a stage, but when Justin died, he left behind a note. And how he chose to end that note to me is he said, the two most powerful things in this world are love and forgiveness. And I think he wrote that for me because he knew that I struggled with those two things. But I think about that a lot. And I find it really interesting that the creator blessed Tanya and I with four boys. And it just floors me that they throw around that word love so freely. You know,
Mm.
every day it's I love you. Um, our oldest is 26, and then we have a 23-year-old, and they'll come over and to just freely say I love you and to give a hug when we greet and when we part. It's sometimes it just stops me in my tracks, and I'm the one with the problem there. But the 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 people who taught me the most about love actually was, or I wasn't in a good place, but I had met a woman who had two kids. Um, and when I met her kids for the first time, those are our oldest two, they had made me a cake. I met them at a cabin and they made me a cake. It was my birthday. This was never planned, but what I remember the most is after supper, the three of them walk out of the kitchen with this cake and they're singing for me.
Mm.
And it's like they loved me for me. And I'll never forget how it felt to just like I didn't have to wear a mask. I had
Mm.
never been around kids before, but there was something so authentic and beautiful, and I found myself just being me, which was suppressed for so long. And you fast forward a year and a half from that moment, and I moved from Edmonton to Saskatoon. That's like 300 miles in with my new family. And I was only 3 months sober when I did so, but that was my new life.
Mm.
And when I drove away from the cabin that first time that I met Tanya's kids, that was when I said, like, again, I don't know how I'm gonna do this, but I'm gonna find a way. Like, I want to be a better person. I had led such a life of self-destruction. I don't even have words. It was just hell. And And so at that point, I wanted to fight, and I'm glad I did, and I'm glad I had a person in my life, Tanya, who believed in me more than I believed in myself.
Hmm.
And I think that's part of the vulnerability. We have to put ourselves out there so that other people can hold us up. We don't have to fight our battles alone. We weren't supposed to.
Right. We weren't supposed to. There's so much in that story that you just shared with us. Thank you. There's so many questions I could ask.
Mhm.
Um, from that story, as you share the story, what do you think is the biggest theme or the most important theme in that story that was the game changer for you?
Probably that I'm worthy of love. I still struggle with that.
Mm.
Um,
Mm.
I've Yeah, I find it hard. And, so I'm really, really fortunate to be in a position where I can speak from a stage and hopefully influence some people. But I tell you, sometimes it is really hard because it feels not like a facade because I always am my authentic self. But sometimes it's like, well, who the hell am I to stand up here and share some
Hmm.
things when I can hardly, get myself on the stage today because I just struggle. But maybe that's part of it, right? It's like I used to be really embarrassed if I showed emotion on a stage, if I
Hmm.
cried,
Hmm. Hmm.
because those are just those old scripts that I had. Um, but I'm grateful that I've made some progress in. Like it's not only okay and acceptable, but that's the connection part that you spoke about earlier, Michelle. Like if people can just see us at a human level, oh, okay. And so I'm still trying to get comfortable with who I am, and I'm still trying to learn how to love myself. I remember when I first moved in and self-harm was something that I just used to do.
Mm.
I think it's like I didn't know how to talk about my pain, so I'm going to show you. Um, and it was Tanya who said, like, we don't do this to ourselves. We don't do this to our body. We treat it with love and respect.
Mm.
And I was in my late 20s at this time, and I didn't know that. It was so
Mm.
foreign. Um, and it's kind of sad that I didn't know how to uh take care of this. And I didn't
Hmm.
even want to take care of it because that
Hmm.
meant that I was going to be alive longer.
Hmm. Hmm. I hear that. The um the theme of connection coming back, I'm going back to the mirror when you connected with yourself, and I'm reflecting on the importance of the connection with others and the importance of feeling that support from others and people who believe in you. And as I'm sitting here, I'm imagining you looking in the mirror that day when you said you connected with yourself, and I'm wondering, coming back to that point, what was different in how you connected with yourself then versus before that? What was different about that moment in your connection with self? Do you have a sense of
I
that?
think I just finally saw myself for what I was and where I was at that point in time, which was a skeleton of a person. And, I'm prior to this, I shared with you, I'm not religious, but I'm very spiritual. And I
Yeah.
think that I just had a team around me or whatever words people use that said you can do better, you can be better, and let's try. And I know that I had a lot of help from the other
Mm.
side to help me to find my voice. And I'll say this too, the veil between the spiritual and physical world is very thin. And Justin, who we lost to suicide, like he is the driving force behind so much of the work that I do. And in terms of connection, I feel more connected to Justin today than when he was here in the physical.
Why is that, do you think?
Because all that we are is energy. And uh, I think that we get lost sometimes in this like we're so quick to focus on what we can see physically and we form these judgments and opinions. And I think I've learned just like dogs. I love dogs. We have three dogs and excuse me, they
Mhm.
see me for me. They go based off of energy and they love me for me. There's no need to put on a facade or an act.
Mm.
They just pick up on truth. And I think from the other side, with my beliefs, I can talk to Justin. I feel like I hear him. I feel
Mm.
connected, and whether or not people believe that's true or legit, it doesn't matter because
Hmm.
it works for me.
Hmm.
And that's the thing. Like, find things that work for you. And if it makes you feel alive, connected, good, keep doing it. If it doesn't, don't do it.
Hmm. Exactly. If you find things that are helping you feel connected, then those are the things to keep doing,
Hmm.
and do more of. um, okay, so pivoting to today, as you reflect back on your journey and where you are today, where do you want to go forward? I know you speak a lot about, particularly with respect to men's mental health and wellness. What's the future look like for you, Alan?
No clue.
I love it.
It's weird, Michelle, because I used to teach courses on goal setting at the college, and um, I think that there's this combination of maybe setting goals, because the universe loves clarity. But I think that you also have to give the universe an opportunity to do what it's supposed to do with it. So I simply ask to be used. Like, let me go where I need to go. And I don't know what that looks like.
Mm.
I know that I have a limited time here, as we all do. And
Hmm.
so I always just put it out there. Like, use me if my story can be of service for something, let's go. And Michelle, the hard part for me, like you had Joe on the podcast recently, and a lot of my closest friends are professional speakers. And so the
Mm.
challenge is it's like that's a career where we're starting to get paid for our story in a way, which, like, I'm 15 years into this,
Hmm.
but initially that was really, really hard because I would do this for free.
Hmm.
Um, and I think that,
Mm.
as I said before, there's nothing more powerful than someone's story. And I I I have no idea, to be honest. Like I I would like to go more global. Our kids are starting to get older, so we're not needed at home as much. But whether it's, in the city that I reside in, or I go to a lot of reserves, schools, corporate, I'll go wherever.
Hmm. Being, I ask to be used. And I think we haven't really touched on this theme, but there's something I think in that, even when, you know, the birthday cake story, I could sense that you genuinely felt loved in that story. I could sense that when Tanya and
100%.
her boys came, right? And that was a moment where it seemed to me that things changed for you in terms of your life perspective, because there was my sense, and please correct me if I'm reading this inaccurately, my sense is that there was something bigger than you. There was
Oh,
something more
absolutely.
that was, and maybe one of the first times that you were really connecting with something
Yeah.
bigger than you, that it was worth being here for and giving to.
Yeah. And what's interesting too is, when I finally put down the bottle for the last time, I was living in Edmonton, and Tanya
Mm-hmm.
was actually in Saskatoon, right? And it was like less than a week after I quit drinking that Tanya called me and said she was pregnant.
Oh my gosh.
And that was another one of those game changers because I said, I will not be a father who
Mm.
is unhealthy in these ways. Like, I know that change is supposed to come from within, but sometimes we need those things outside of
Mm-hmm.
ourselves to help be the catalyst for change.
Yeah.
And that was one of them.
You're really pulling on, purpose is something that's very common, especially in corporate these days. But, it's a very common word now that we hear a lot of, this theme of having purpose. And that's the sense I'm getting, is that there was, I believe that if we don't have something bigger than ourselves that we're contributing to in a meaningful way, where we feel like we're adding or creating a better life for someone somehow, or something better in the world, we don't feel as um, I don't know what the word is. I don't want to say important, but we don't feel relevant, maybe.
Hmm.
Less, like, what am I doing here? If I'm not helping
Hmm.
others, what am I doing here? And without that, I think people do feel lost. Whatever their journey is, people feel lost. And so what I'm hearing from you is that really helped you come to that place of, you were connecting with self and connecting with others and feeling that support and experiencing all of that, and now you had something to pull you forward into a bigger future, a different future, a better future for yourself and others in your life.
Yeah. And I mean, I never saw this coming. I hated
Mhm.
public speaking, terrified,
Yeah.
actually. Never
Hmm.
slept for nights
Yeah.
before I had to do a talk.
It's so
And
common. Well, people say, what do they say? People would rather die than get on a stage.
yeah,
Right?
that was me. And it's
Yeah.
interesting,
Oh
Michelle,
my
because a lot of
gosh.
people will say, oh, it must be nice to be such a gifted speaker. And it's like, no, you have no idea. Like the first 5 years, how many times I turned the car around, how I was physically sick every
Mm.
time, you know. Um, but yeah, you're right. We all need to find that thing that helps us to feel as though we're giving to something greater than ourselves.
And I think that's where courage is really bred from that. We're very heroes are rarely heroes when they're digging themselves out of something for their own use or their own benefit, right? It's really about helping others, and that's I think that's what all of us crave and need is we need to feel like we're in service in some way in order to feel like
Mhm.
our life is worthwhile and valuable. So I'm hearing that. The one thing we haven't touched on, I would love to just touch on this a little bit before we finish up. We've talked about connection and how important that is. We've talked about support and being supported and now supporting others as well and how important that is. Um, your company, your clothing line called Born Resilient. There's something about being born, and I know you have a story about that. And for those listeners who are interested, you can hear more about that story in some of Alan's other speeches. But the key idea here is that we are born resilient. So there's an authentic self that's born in us, and somehow that resilience dissipates. I'm curious about this perspective of born, because I know that you feel like you're born resilient, and that's a debatable topic, as I understand it. Tell us a little
Yeah.
bit about that as we're finishing up here today. That
Yeah, thanks for
theme.
bringing that up because that is something that wow, that was another game changer for me. Because if you think about it, when you were born, you literally fought for that first breath, yes? Like you came out kicking and screaming, and even now, if someone ever were to reach out and physically harm you or choke you, which of course I hope would never happen, but when that happens, we will instinctively fight. You know,
Yeah.
if we found ourselves to be drowning or someone puts our head underwater, we will instinctively fight. I think that for me, it's as simple as we don't give ourselves enough credit. We don't give credit where credit is due because all that you have done
Mm.
for your entire life is fight.
Yeah.
Like you have survived 100% of your most challenging days. And more than anything, why this is significant is because for me, I think that people are still here because they have unfinished business.
Mm.
If that wasn't true, then Creator God, whatever word they use, would say, time's up, time to
Hmm.
come home. And that in itself, for me, is what reminds people that their life has meaning and that their life has purpose.
Nice. We are here because we have unfinished business.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're reminding. I've heard that expression before in terms of, we live on this in this life, in this body, in this form for as long as we need to learn the lessons that we need to live and to contribute, what we're meant to contribute, and then we move on.
Yeah.
And I think, it helps to explain people's journeys and how different everybody's life is because of if we believe that to be true, not everybody does, and that's
Yeah.
an individual thing. But if we believe that to be true, then we're here to learn, we're here to survive, we're here to be resilient and to continue to fight to survive as the lessons that we're meant to learn and to contribute our fullness and our full self to the story. So thank you for reminding us of our will and our intention to survive and our fight to survive so that we can be of value and contribute more to the world. So important.
Hmm.
Yeah. And I love that, as I'm thinking about themes, I tend to think in themes, especially when I'm thinking about how people are different and unique. And I think as I'm speaking with you, Alan, it's been just fascinating to explore the way you speak to specifically connection, and how that is related as I'm hearing it to the mirror
Mm,
connecting with self, not just connecting with others, because most people think of it that way, but there's a moment where you said, and I connected with myself in that mirror. So
mm,
there's something there that's really rich and juicy. The other piece
mm,
is around the support. It's not just being understood; it's also being supported. Like the man in the group where you joined, and he was the only one. He says, "Okay, Al, I get
mm,
it." Right? You felt not just understood, but there was an inherent, and we're here to support you underneath that. As you shared that story, there was an
mm.
inherent piece there that was underneath it that adds to it. Importance of purpose, and then of course how we're born to do this. We're born to be alive and to give goodness. So I just want to thank you so much for the richness inside this conversation. As we're finishing up, as you'd like to, what would be the final message that you might like to share with our listeners as they're to help them take away something really juicy or remind them of the key theme that you'd like them to take?
Yeah. Well, I appreciate the opportunity, Michelle, and thanks for making this happen. I think for me is, I don't know, maybe it's as simple as dream big. Like, I mean big. I think that
Mm. Oh,
we
goosebumps.
Joe talks about this, right? Like Joe Roberts. And if
Mhm.
those who are listening haven't heard that podcast, I'd encourage you to because Joe's a beautiful soul. But he always speaks about possibility.
Mhm.
And for me, it's like don't sell yourself short. You have unique abilities, gifts, and talents that the world needs. And I think that your soul needs to express it as much as the world needs it.
Yeah, exactly. Hence the storytelling, hence the light in the eyes. There's so much richness there. Thank you. Dream big and believe that you're meant to do things to contribute in meaningful ways. That's why you're here. That's awesome. Thank you so much, Alan. For those who are wanting to find out more about you and perhaps follow you and your message, where might they connect with you?
For sure. Feel free. Probably the website is the best. It's www.allankehler.com. LinkedIn is also probably the best place. So thank you, Michelle, for the
Oh,
opportunity and for the work
an
that you're
absolute
doing.
treat. Thank you so much, Alan. It's been a joy having you today. Until next
Thank
time,
you.
see you then. Bye bye for now.